Hi. The human body is the most organic computer there is. So fascinating that just about all the studies that there are has been or will be would be one way or the other based on the human body, because the human interpretation, human appreciation, and well, one way or the other for human application, you could say that. But we could also be kind of molding the world according to how we are seeing things. But that's not all that there is. We would be limiting what is possible from being part of such a vast, multi-partite, multifaceted, interrelated system that the human experience is in. If we are only going to be looking at data for the purpose of molding how things are to our own use, and we will be playing a very limiting role if we are going to continue to now. And that's the only way, apparently, if we do not see that our human body is not just an organic computer. I just contradicted what I started in the beginning, kind of. But it's also true that the human body is the most organic computer there is. Now, coming back to what I just said later, human body is not just an organic computer. As part of a whole within our make is a microcosmic representation of the macrocosm in a fraction that is appreciable by the human factor in the scheme of things. As in what is affordable to being human and the human contribution in the whole of what is. I'm in the presence of some very esteemed people who maintain the tension required, so I'm not losing perspective. I have tree people, flying people, crawling people, stinging people, mosquitoes, all kinds of people, light people, dark people, shadows, lights, flower people, wind people. So, to make sure the tension is appropriate, so I'm not losing the human factor in the larger scheme of things, of which the humans and every other people are part of. Having said that, must also mention that all that there is also finds expression in terms of particles, waves, stillness, silence, elements, which I think at least is earth, water, fire, air, spirit, space. There are the molecules, hydrogen, sulfur, nitrogen, oxygen, which in combinations form bigger compound particles, which are also the different people around, including but not limited to the human people. Where people can be, when I'm saying people, to be considered as larger complex compound molecules. Kind of. You're going to consider that a molecule or a compound. Yeah. Larger compounds are people, different shape, sizes, structures, function, each having a functional role in the scheme of things. And each has a job to do. Yeah, job. That's a little harsher word. Has a role to play and also a job. But if you're not going, well, that could be a reason for why we need to dig in our roots and then hold on tight, so that we are holding the space for holding the job that we need to be doing the way we need to. So that could kind of give reason for having our roots be stronger, because we are not just playing a role, but there's also a job that each of us are doing. Without getting too tight about it, in which case we could get constipated and not quite easily breathing and moving and then growing and then in and out. Can be free enough to be at the same time be doing what we're doing without getting constipated ourselves or constipating others. In the significance of the job. I may have to edit this, but I am considering what is available from being free enough to have the space that I'm probably, if I'm sitting amongst humans, there is the job pressure. A lot of us are yet to learn how to relax and ease into and be while we are doing our jobs. So there will be that human stress. We are not so comfortable in what it means to be human, or we don't consider an individual, each individual, as being sufficient, and not having to compare with another, which is always happening, which is leading to stress mechanisms. And I'm kind of amidst humans who are in different kinds of not knowing that it's okay to be you, like who you are, and not trying to be somebody else, and there's competition, and it's like a vortex, it's like a sucker that does not allow for the ease to, I can take my space, my time in which to think and then contemplate and then speak like people here can. Yeah, there's not this job pressure of I need to, there is the job pressure too for each of them, but there is probably not the human kind of job pressure, I suppose. Maybe trees are more evolved than humans. Yeah, humans are in different stages of figuring out who they are, who the body is, and yeah. So a lot of evolution, yeah, a lot of scope in the human potential. Yet in different stages of development, which is what I'm working on and facilitating, so they can be more tree-like at least. Yeah, humans, in the scheme of things, and lot of work for the humans to do. We are like trees, and people are like waiting for humans to grow up enough to be doing their job, so humans can take care of trees rather than trees taking care of humans. Yeah, so kind of they would like to be relieved of, kind of a little bit, well, coexistent, but at least if trees don't have to deal with that job as much as they have to do right now, it will be much easier for the system, They can dig in the roots more and then spread out, and then, you can do that job better rather than with the stress of taking care of humans. Monkey, you need to grow up. So, talking about the human composition, yeah, that would be easier if we kind of get our human composition a little more, if we are more home with it, which is where the anatomy and physiology of a humane being is a project, the HumaneBodyProject, and is geared towards enabling humans be more aware of the potential within the structure and framework of having a human body. Just a rough idea. Now, my logo, Mighty Baby, has some mathematical representation, some points. So I'm going to capture this based on that image, so that there is a point of reference. So when you're looking at, say, a Google image of a skeleton or a human structure, as we know, as has been taught in the biology classes, you may not be able to see these points of references, and hence I'm making the reference to my baby. So you can see what is not obviously seen in the anatomy and physiology pictures that may be available on Google and other places. So I'm trying to bring our attention to a paradigm of thinking through facilitating original humane intelligence, so that we have humanity cross boundaries. But I'm also bringing attention to the potential that is within the human framework from a person-centric model of the universe, by which we can be who we are and at the same time do the role which is of the human lot, and at the same time live and let live from what is possible from the perspectives that I'm bringing forth here in facilitating organic, evolving, wholesomizing, better experience of living, not just for us, but everywhere around, everything around, everywhere around. So, let me try, yeah? So, there are 20 points on Mighty Baby, right from the tip right up to apparently like the hip region on the image. There are 20 points. I'm only pointing out the obvious marks which may not be so obvious. You may have to zoom in to count those points. There are 20 points on either side, so 20 plus 20, 40, yeah. And this is only a 2D representation, yeah. We're going to look at it as a 3D. Say for example, and you can kind of turn around the image. You will see more, yeah. But for now, just the visual landmarks. From the hip, kind of. We're going to say, you can kind of look at it as the hip, but then I will come to those details further. But let's, for a rough mark, consider that where there's 20 points, it's at the hip, just for a reference right now. From there till the rib cage would be just one plateau like that. From the rib cage, yeah, to the dome of the body circumlocutor, yeah, just the dome there is 13 plus 13 points, yeah, so that's 26. Between that 13th point, with the topmost plateau there, and the head dot, there's a space. If you zoom in, you will see that it looks like a volume, like a digital image of a wave. Like if you're going to put a drop of water on a surface of still water, you'll see a ripple. So if you zoom in, it looks like a ripple. Yeah, the head dot from the downmost plateau kind, you will see 4 such plateaux. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you're going to look at it from another perspective, like a more bigger one, you will actually see 6, because at the front and back also there will be one, this kind of surface. Yeah. Total number of points on the head dot, I don't know if I missed out these 4 points, but there are 41 I counted. Yeah, so I need to look at this more if I've excluded something or included it. Yeah. So because every time I keep looking at the image of Mighty Baby, I see another perspective, another point, or something that I hadn't counted before, or maybe I need to count again. So I keep bouncing off of this image quite often. So right now, the last count, as I remember, the head dot has 41 points, but I'm still at the rough appreciation, yeah? Bring your attention to focus on. So 41 is still there in the head dot. And then there are other numbers in the whole composition. We'll come to it later. Now, why am I mentioning this? In reference to the human body, in the anatomy and physiology of the human body, anatomy and physiology of a human being, and I'm not just talking about the body. When we are coming to the anatomy and physiology of a human being, the diagrams, the representations, the points that needs to be appreciated would be different and would not be found in our textbooks already. And hence this work may be of more importance than may be just obvious. That may be being appreciated. Now, 13 plus 13 from rib cage to here. When we look at our rib cage itself, we know that the human rib cage has 12 ribs on each side. 2 of the ribs are floating. Lowermost 2 of the ribs on each side is floating. So 4 ribs are floating. So we have 10 jointed, from spine to the sternum. Okay. So back would be the spine to the sternum, in front, the breastplate. From the spine, the 2 which are floating, the 4 which are floating, is below that. So this is around the region of the diaphragm. Around the region of the diaphragm, So I'm going to have to make another video or lengthen it. So diaphragm is kind of like a little bit within the rib cage, lower part of. And so the floating ribs, the 4 which are not completely joined in front, from the spine to the front, which are not completely joined in front, would in some way also would have the diaphragm within it, kind of is like hugging a little bit. And some aspects of the diaphragm are behind, attached with the spine. And then, so there are anatomically, just to give a point of reference, that some parts of the diaphragm, a large part of the diaphragm is within the rib cage, and then there are attachments which would be seen outside to the spine or to other muscles connected. And also some part of the liver also has diaphragmatic fascial connections. So what I'm also saying here is, we cannot, if we consider that the skin is a continuous layer of tissue, right from the skin of the cell, individual cell, right up to the skin of our body, they are in one way or the other related, kind of forming a lattice work, a network within themselves. Like we have the internet, if we consider that the different computers through servers, to stations, they're all connected. And if we consider kind of transpose that idea of the internet with our body, then right from the cell to the outer surface of our body is all connected through networks. Some networks form organs, some networks form tissues, and there are different kinds of tissues. Bone is a tissue, muscle is a tissue, blood is a tissue. So there are different kinds of groups of cells that form tissues, and there are cells holding them all together. And there are muscles itself, have different kinds of muscles, and which are being held by skins. So the skin, if you're going to consider like the internet, like from the surface of a single cell right up to the whole body is all connected to different networks. And maybe we could, the idea of the internet within our body would kind of make sense. Having said that, if we are then going to consider that the diaphragm has a skin too, and that skin kind of continues with the liver and with the omentum or the peritoneum in some way, then we are not going to be limited. Then there would be, let's just say there is a sphere of influence of each organ system. If you're going to consider the diaphragm as an organ, or at least a organelle, part of an organ, we consider the fascia to be an organ, the whole fascial system to be an organ, then the diaphragm would be an organelle, part of the organ. organ system. No, I can't say fascia to be an organ system. Let's say it's an organ, and the diaphragm is an organelle. Like we have the gastrointestinal organ system. Okay, organ system, fascia organ system. And I'm more tending to think of it as an organ. Okay, we're going to say different parts. Organelle. Okay, organ system. Fine. Where if you're going to say the gastrointestinal system, digestive system has many organs. Yeah. And then the pancreas is an organelle of the organ system that is the digestive system. Maybe it would probably make sense if I've gotten it right. Yeah. The diaphragm is an organelle. Why am I tending to? I have to examine this closely as to why am I tending to think the fascial system as an organ than an organ system. I tend to notice that when I zoom into how I'm saying things, there is a certain internal logic by which I'm speaking, and as I examine those different aspects, then I notice why have I tended to think that versus something else. I've been thinking about this work over many years. So there is it's not just a memory palace, but it's more like a blockchain. Yeah. So there's I need to kind of zoom in and then see why do I examine that way. So it's a system in itself. So from which, as I appreciate, kind of zoom in and then see, okay, that's this part. Like you would look at a particular organism under a microscope and you see, what, so many things are there in that. So my thinking is kind of like that right now. So I'm tending to think of the fascia as an organ. Alright. Now the rib cage. 14, 12 rib cage, 12 ribs. The clavicle, you consider that as the 13th rib, yeah, because it's also connected with the scapula, yeah, the shoulder girdle, and the shoulder girdle is in a way connected with the spine too, and is around this region of the whole rib cage system. So I consider this also, clavicle also, to be part of the rib cage. Yeah. So 13, and then so that in the image of Mighty Baby, yeah, you have 13. That's 26. 26 alphabets. We have 26 alphabets in the English language. So that may be a point of reference. You can look at that way. So the 14th. I would call that as the rib cage, part of the rib cage, because it has an important role to play in the anatomy and physiology of a humane being, in terms of the anatomy and physiology of a humane being. And that is the breastplate, the sternum, yeah, has a point about here. It's like a depression here between the clavicles. So I consider that as a point of reference. But in the image of Mighty Baby, there's a plateau right on top, yeah, just where the circumnuclear thing is, body is. There's a plateau on top. You can consider that to be as a counting surface for the 14th one. But the 14th point is actually the space in between the body and the head dot, where you can see the ripple of like a sound wave, a sound ripple. But I consider that to be the 14th. And that is important because in terms of, say, music, yeah, the chromatic scale is said to have 12, but I think it's 13 if you go by the Katapayadi Sankhya. Because Katapayadi Sankhya has Sa, okay, this is going to be interesting, because this gets really interesting. Okay, according to the Katapayadi Sankhya, Sa, Re1, Re2, Re3 and Ga1 is said to be 1. Yeah, but let's just count this. Sa, Re1, Re2, Ga1, Ga2, Ma1, Ma2, Pa, Da1, Da2, yeah. Then Ni1, Ni2, Ni3. is also there. Okay, knee 3. Okay, and then there is sound. Yeah. So we're going to go by. I tend to count the knee 3 also important, but I think the re 1 is also important. But I'm tending to think the sounds of life have 14 sounds. Yeah. I may be confusing with another aspect of my thinking, but I think the sounds of life have 14 sounds and 6 levels of silence. And that's only half of the equation. The other half being 14 sounds of life and 6 levels of silence. So it's going to be 12 sounds of silence, levels of silence. And 14 plus 14, so 28 sounds of life. And then so that will be 28. And then I think the male and the female aspects, we're going to give them a sound in and of themselves. Then we would have 30. So 30 together also forms the lamed according to the Hebrew gematria. So a person, a human being, a humane being hasn't really formed until these 30 aspects, ribs, so to speak, is in place. So the 14th sound, the region between the body circumlocutor and the head dot, is actually 2. So unless you have your, so if you go by the reference of the Nilakanta, yeah, the Ardhanarishwar idea, the idea of Ardhanarishwar has the idea of a snake, or Parvati detoxifies Shiva at the region of the throat, so that the poison is not spreading to the rest of the body, So the Samudra Manthan continues. So we consider that the 14th dot at the neck is actually 2, and that the rib cage also, what we're counting as not just 13 plus 13, 14. All of this we're going to consider this as 14 plus 14, and then consider one for an additional, like the head dot. Well, we could the head dot, if we consider that as it's not just 1 dot, but it's actually 2. Yeah. So then we have 30. So we have from the circumlocutor to the hip. Yeah. It's not 20. It's like 40. You're going to have to double that. Yeah. So the image is just a representation of one person, but it's actually a representation of 2 aspects. Now, that's for just according to the image of Mighty Baby. Our spine has, if you're going to count it as 36 vertebrae. There's the sphenoid, if you consider the vertebra to begin from the sphenoid. Then there's the occiput, yeah? So that's 2 of the vertebra. 7 cervical vertebra, 12 thoracic vertebra, 5 lumbar vertebra, 5 apparently fused sacral bones, which forms the, well, it's just above the tailbone. 5 apparently fused, but I'm not going to count them as fused. So 5 vertebra, sacral vertebra, and then there is an iffy idea about how many bones form the tail, but I'm going to take it as 5. Yeah. Why? Because they said 4 or 5, so I'm going to take the bigger number than the smaller number, because there could be 5. So I'm going to consider that as 5. So we're going to count it all up. Right from the head till the tailbone, we have 36 vertebrae. In terms of particle physics, there is said to be 36 particles. That includes the particle and the antiparticle together. So, just for a point of reference, if you're going to appreciate the human body from at least these particle and wave and the composition of many of these things, then maybe the Mighty Baby would give a better kind of a pictorial representation of remembering the human body. Every person has a human body here. A human being has a human body. A human person has a human body. But in us coming to be functioning from at least appreciating the world from a person-centric model of the universe, if you're going to think of that way, or at least functioning as a human being has a potential within the framework of having a human body, then maybe the image of mighty baby would be a reminder for us to, over time, to bounce off of, and then, this is what it means to be human. And it's not a problem, it's actually a solution. And it's also a blessing. Thank God we have a body that's human, and it's taken millions of years to form. And, well, through several movements of plant and animal and microorganism and contributing, forming, there has been several waves that came and moved, and until the monkey, at least monkeyish organism, got its tail tucked inside the body, and then we are standing up as humans and then lording right now. But we are yet to kind of appreciate and understand what it means to have now evolved into a body that's human, and we are part of all of this whole system. And what does that mean? Why has all of this happened? Are humans really, as somebody has said, if humans were not there, then the planet would do well. But I don't agree. I mean, so much of work to develop, to in one way or the other also form the human body. And you're saying that, if humans were not there, I mean, so many years and so much of work. So it's a dishonor, disrespect to all that has come about, such that the human body also evolved amongst all of these different things that has happened. Human body evolved. Okay, so it has a place in and of itself in the whole scheme of things, and needs an appreciation which is not being duly given. And hence I'm like this person who has the privilege of doing this, of making what has come to my attention and awareness, and hence I'm speaking. I hope this gives perspective, and further videos will probably bring more appreciation of what I'm doing and what I'm making available and what is possible from appreciating the work that I'm doing, and what is possible from looking at life through these lenses that medicine intelligence is bringing forth. I'm trying to kind of garner a certain interest to this name itself, medicine intelligence, and what this enterprise is doing, so that as a point of reference, like you have science as a subject, math as a subject, language as a subject. So when you're kind of appreciating medicine intelligence as a subject that needs its due appreciation, so much is possible. So I'm trying to also bring attention to something that has never been heard as medicine intelligence, and then what is possible from looking at life from this lens. Thank you for your attention. Hi. So just to document another perspective about what has been said previously, the human body has formed over millions of years of evolution since life has showed up on the planet. And if you take in terms of the idea of Manvantara or the Noah's Ark, there have been several generations, several cultures of human civilization, which I call as almighty dotting, may have attempted in having a human being come into existence, like how has been described in the book of Genesis, for example, where what may be called as the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve are living in the Garden of Eden. And so probably to have humans be living in the Garden of Eden and not powwowing and realize the potential that is there in having a body that's human. Several cultures of, if you consider in terms of a petri dish in which an organism is being cultured, and if you consider that there is a lot of potential in this culture for this, if you're going to take the example of a petri dish, and then to have that optimum strain, there is several attempts made. So we consider the Noah's Ark and the Manvantara as several attempts to get that optimum culture that's possible in this species called human, by this great, by this observer, technician, or the architect, as maybe this may be in reference to the movie Matrix, where there's the reference of the architect and the oracle, but we consider as technicians, kind of different kinds of technicians, in attempting to have the human, an optimum culture of the human species. Then there have been several attempts, and so much of evolution has given rise to having the human body in an aquatic form of a life form, having developing a vertebra, and then being from an invertebrate to a vertebrate, and then standing up on 2 feet with the head right on top of the body, and with the eyes facing in front, with the tail inside the body tucked, yeah, and then walking on 2 feet, yeah, like a cross between a tree, an animal, a microorganism, an insect, and several organization of organisms, bees, for example, the monkeys, for example, the lichen, which is a combination of algae and fungi, coexistent cultures. So many organizational forms have been worked with, and then there is this human species which is formed, a body that's formed, but there's a difficulty in being human. Yeah. So there have been several civilization attempts to realize the potential that is there in this design of this organism. It's like, you have a computer. There's the idea of a computer, or say even the internet, for example. A computer was formed, and then an optimum version of a computer, and then an internet forms, and an optimum version of an internet, and then and then what is possible from the internet, the different technologies which is possible. I'm talking in terms of zero technology, where we are presently working with the 0-1 technology. I'm talking in terms of a zero technology. So what is possible from just the body structure of a human being, there is immense potential. Yeah, in realizing that, and so the body has formed, but what it takes in realizing the potential in being human, probably takes medicine intelligence. Yeah, so medicine intelligence, if you're not going to consider it as another enterprise, just another topic, or another field of study, like we have computers, we have different software, different applications. So medicine intelligence is also another software, kind of another line of thought, stream of consciousness to be thought about. But instead, if you think of medicine intelligence as this, as a science of life, life sciences, science of life, and if we consider that biology as a word is actually the study of the science of life, and if you consider that if you consider biology to be a pure science, then maybe you would think of medicine intelligence with a little more attention than maybe being afforded right now, and the potential that is there in being human, and the study of it, and in terms of medicine intelligence, would be more than a little consideration, more than a little interest. Thank you for listening. I'm trying to bring different perspectives by which to appreciate what I'm doing here through this enterprise and what is possible in appreciating the human body from a humane perspective, in appreciating our own life story from what I call as a My Story project. For appreciating the human body, I have the Humane Body Project. But it requires certain perspectives by which to appreciate this, so for which I have Connect on. So little by little, I'm bringing those perspectives by which this work can be appreciated, but more importantly, the work itself is to bring an appreciation of what it means to be human, what it means to be human, and what it means to have a body that is human, and what is possible in living life from a humane body in our daily, everyday interactions. So this is applied science, but also an ongoing study. You're living life while you're studying the same life that you're living, and then bettering it. So it's a different approach, it's a different methodology, it's a different way of living life. It's a yogic form of life where you are ongoingly unifying and detoxifying and ecologically. So it's not economically, but if you go deeper, it's not where economy is a system of names, nomenclatures, and then interactions from nomenclatures. So if you go deeper, it's a logic of um, coexistent, sustainable living, coordinate living, yeah, coordinated living, which may be called as economy, but it may be based on nomenclature. But this is a logic, the logic based on values. If you're going to consider money, where economy may be working from money. If you go deeper, ecology, the logic from values, then money maybe have to be looked at in terms of value. A person's worth, or maybe being appreciated in terms of value points. And then when we talk in terms of ecology instead of economy, then what value a person has and what values the person brings to the system of names, for example, the different kinds of systems there is, all that there is, different schema of things, yeah, as a matrix in which life shows up, exists. Then money, if you're going to appreciate in terms of, if you're going to rename money as, say, values, then we have a value-based system. And what value you are cultivating, you're developing, and then how those values, how they contribute to making the system better, wholesomer, healthier, would then probably be the terminology for appreciating ecology versus economy, which is working based on money. Yeah, so I'm just bringing attention to a paradigm of thinking, the difference in the paradigm of thinking. And then when I talk in terms of cultivating value, I have what I'm calling as Nirbij Yoga, as a this I'm taking reference from the Chinese teleseries Ashes of Love, because that's where I've heard about these words. It's called, they call it as cultivating. So when you are in terms of Sanatana Dharma, if you talk in terms, I'm talking in terms of sanitizing Dharma as Sanatana Dharma. When we are ongoingly detoxifying, healthifying Dharma as is, then I would call it a sanitizing Dharma. And Dharma as in our own body, as a ground for being and becoming, and then we are living what we are becoming. Yeah. So if we are not happy with what we are becoming and the consequences from there, then what it takes to be such a way that we are happy with who we are, how we are being appreciated, how what we bring to life is being appreciated by others, and how that in itself, like a tree in a forest, is supported, coordinated, encouraged to be and become and then learn from. You're an inspiration to others. Yeah. So when others are breathing, what you are bringing forth into existence is what becomes good enough that they can breathe, like inspiration. There is inspiration, expression. So if you are inspired by what somebody else is doing, what they are expiring, yeah, there's this expiration happening as the output of what they are doing, the produce, and you're inspired by what they are producing, then that becomes the inspiration by which you are producing your own stuff. So that becomes an ecology in terms of nomenclature, or through words I'm referring to a way of thinking, a context of thinking, which may not be being obviously seen, and hence I'm using words by which to bring your attention to this paradigm of thinking. So Nirbij Yoga is a method of cultivating or sanitizing the Dharma, that's the body, such that we are detoxifying, decontaminating, um, 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 so that we are maintaining being originally us, being me. So we are continuing to maintain being me. So that, say, for example, in terms of a dish that we may be cooking, if the salt is becoming, say, sugar or some other element, the dish will not taste the same. So what it takes to maintain being salt, so that the salt may be kept in a jar, and then we are using the same spoon that we use chili powder for to use salt, and then the taste of salt and the composition of salt changes. So what it takes to keep detoxifying, decontaminating, so the salt is remaining salt, is also what I'm calling as, okay, when I'm saying salt, I am a certain composition of a person. Another person is a certain composition of a person, right from birth. What will we call as Ishvara Pranidhana, yeah? Or the spice is the prime directive for being in existence. So what it takes to maintain that prime directive or that Ishvara Pranidhana, such that it is not getting diffused and becoming something else. Yeah. So then what we have come into existence for, like salt or any masala, what we do in the scheme of things may not be being possible if you're becoming something else. Yeah. So to maintain that prime directive, that Ishvara Pranidhana that each person has come into existence for, so that violence is not sub-optimizing what a person is. Yeah. So that the health of when I'm talking in terms of health of a person, maintaining that Ishvara Pranidhana, that prime directive, in that optimum health that it requires to be, so that salt is doing salt's work. Yeah. Together the dish forms, and we eat tasty dishes. We don't eat something that is whose composition is off. Yeah. So if you are seeing many kinds of diseases and people standing with guns in the borders, probably the dishes that are kind of the human experience may not be being as tasteful, and hence there are different kinds of diseases showing up, or people standing with guns to the borders, so that you better now perform, yeah, kind of things. Because my experience of living is not nice because of what you are doing. Yeah. So there may be that kind of strife and struggle, powwow happening because of what it takes to maintain me being me and you being you. So that live and let live. I be me, you be you, and then we interact like this. It's like an organic chemistry. When you're making a dish, salt responds with chili powder, responds with the vegetable, responds with the oil, and together they kind of get it together and have a music and a certain dance and a certain taste and flavor, and it's tasty. Yeah, it's flavorful. People come around with the smell of a nice dish, and then what keeps them there is when the dish is continuing to be tasty. Yeah, while the dish is cooking, it's nice. While you're eating, it's nice. After eating the dish also, it still has that aftertaste. It's still nice. You would want to make that dish again. Yeah. So that's the idea. So medicine intelligence is about that idea of a dish. So that our human experience, people want to live again. Yeah. It's not like looking at liberation. I just don't want to live anymore. I want liberation. Yeah. So it's like life is not so inspiring enough that people want to be born again and again and again. And, have life. It is so beautiful. So medicine intelligence is about having life be beautiful so that you want to be born. Yeah. And to continue to live the life that you have, because it's so beautiful. There's so much that you can bring into existence, and so much is yeah, it's awesome to be alive. So I hope this gives a little perspective of what is possible through medicine intelligence, but also the different values by which I'm speaking about this work, and there are many perspectives about this, that a person, a group of people, each in our own space, may need to take some time to get our head around, but it's also ongoingly happening, like applied science. Living is happening now, but at the same time the study of what is possible from looking at life from these perspectives, from these lenses, potential is immense. So I hope
you can appreciate some aspects of this, or in some way you can connect it with this and then see what is possible when you are learning medicine intelligence, yeah, on what it takes to have medicine intelligence. For example, at least even Nirbij Yoga. If you're learning Nirbij Yoga, you're maintaining being you, and then maybe encouraging others also to be themselves. So what is possible in a family? Yeah, what is possible for yourself in terms of the health that you have, health, wealth, and wisdom that you have, just by having a body that's human and being you, originally you. Yeah, and then in a family system, say different people are maintaining their own health, yeah, being themselves, and what is possible from our interactions, from being ourselves, doing what we have come into existence for. What are the humane interactions possible? What kind of a society, what kind of an ecology is possible from living life this way? Um, Thank you for your attention. I'll just give some more perspective on the work that I'm doing.